They didn't shove her. They didn't shout. All it took was a hand to the arm and a quiet redirect. One black woman. Pulled from line. Not for a weapon, not for a bag check, just for existing where she wasn't expected. Behind her, a white man strolled through, untouched. No questions, no glances, no suspicion. Her offense? Her skin didn't match the seat she'd paid for. No drama, no noise. Just that cold, hollow form of injustice that wears a uniform and speaks in quiet tones. But what no one realized, not the agent, not the guards, not the strangers watching with carefully blank expressions, was that the woman they dismissed had more power than anyone boarding that flight. And she didn't need to make a scene to make impact. She only needed to hold her ground. This wasn't about a zone on a screen or a boarding group number. It was about something deeper, systemic, subtle, and sharpened by repetition. Prejudice in a tie, bias behind a desk. So ask yourself, if they stripped away your status without a word, would you raise your voice? Or would you let them believe they'd won? Just long enough to trigger everything they couldn't see coming. Don't blink. Because what's next? You won't see it coming. The airport buzzed with its usual chaos. Announcements spilled through the ceiling. Business shoes tapped past steaming coffee stands. At 6:42 a.m., Monroe Ellis stepped into the first-class line at Terminal C LaGuardia. Tailored black coat. Quiet grace. No hesitation. In her hand, a boarding pass gleamed. Seat 1A, Zurich. Executive class. She waited. Still. When her turn came, the gate agent, a broad man with clipped hair and a plasticed grin, looked up, paused. His eyes moved across her face like a scanner. "Economies to the left," he said, chin tilted. Monroe didn't flinch. She simply angled her phone forward. "Flight to Zurich, seat 1A. He didn't even glance at the screen. Just kept his hand up like a barrier. "Other line, ma'am." The woman behind her got a bright smile and breezed through. No pause. Monroe said nothing. No argument, no ask. She stepped to the side, waited 5 seconds, then walked to the nearest kiosk. Because Monroe Ellis didn't need to demand her seat. She was here to watch them lose theirs. This wasn't new. It was familiar. Routine even. But what they didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that Monroe understood systems better than most. She didn't just work in equity. She owned it. She wasn't just a partner. She was the principal investor behind a $650 million compliance network used by 5 global airlines, including this one. She tapped the kiosk, reprinted her boarding pass, walked to TSA pre-check. "You've been redirected to standard," said the agent. She looked at the screen. Green light, confirm status. "I'm global entry, Nexus random flag," came the reply. Still no protest. She moved lines, laid her items flat. Her laptop, her files, her credentials. They scanned. They questioned. They rifled through her paperwork. One agent smirked when he saw her company name. Ellis Risk Capital. "Finance, huh?" She didn't confirm. She didn't need to. Because this wasn't inconvenience. It was confirmation. Through security, she gathered her belongings. No help offered. And headed toward the lounge. Access denied. "Your credentials aren't registering." She showed her receipt. Time-stamped. Verified. Still, the receptionist waved her off with a frown. "It's probably a back-end error." It wasn't. Monroe walked inside anyway, sat by the window. She hadn't raised her voice. But her silence? It was recording everything. Not on video, not for social media. For something far more dangerous. The moment the first gate agent dismissed her, a private security protocol began logging entries. Anomalies. Language. Movement. Facial recognition scans. Because the system they thought they controlled? She funded it. At 7:03 a.m., Monroe reached into her bag, pulled out her tablet, and tapped 4 digits. No flashing screen. No notifications. Just a silent handshake with an encrypted network buried beneath Zurich's financial district. Within seconds, 3 compliance monitors were alerted. Geneva, D.C., Singapore. Each received a private log. Ellis, Monroe. Asset incident. Terminal C. Tier 2 exposure. She hadn't lost access. They had lost alignment. Now she wasn't a passenger. She was a trigger. At the gate, her name was gone from the premium list. No surprise. She just sat back and watched. The staff didn't see the signal go out. Didn't hear the ping. Didn't know a $650 million risk system was flagging their behavior in real time. But Monroe knew. Because this wasn't a tantrum. This was accountability. At 7:11, pre-boarding was announced. She didn't rise. Across the concourse, 2 officers started walking her way. And Monroe? She didn't blink. From across the concourse they approached, slow, smooth, rehearsed. No bark, no urgency. Just that practiced calm meant to look routine but land as pressure. One officer, short and square-built, with a close fade, badge-reading D. Hayes, eased into her path. "Morning, ma'am," he said, a smile stretching thin. "Quick screening follow-up. Won't take long." Brielle Ellis lifted a brow. Not in alarm, precision. "I already cleared TSA." "Understood." He nodded. "But we got a flag tied to your carry-on. Might be nothing. Just need a look." Beside him, a second officer in mirrored shades motioned toward a small partitioned section. Plastic table, vinyl gloves, and a curtained barrier. Clearly prepared. Clearly for her. Brielle rose, lifted her bag and walked without question. She wasn't confused. She was collecting. Eyes around her shifted, trailing her movement like smoke. She always felt them. Always. The officers led her to the table, requested ID, again, and began the routine check. They didn't offer gloves. They didn't ask permission. They simply opened the case. Out came her laptop, her tablet. 2 hardbound folders, black leather, embossed in gold. Ellis Global Equity. Hayes flipped through one slowly, as if he'd find a confession tucked between revenue forecasts and asset migration data. "Paper, huh?" he mused. "Most folks just upload everything these days." Brielle met his gaze. Cool. Silent. "Most folks don't manage sovereign portfolios across 5 continents." He smirked, like he thought it was cute. She didn't. Then came the question. Soft, casual, but designed to probe. "Travel a lot for work?" No reply. He lifted a velvet-lined case from the bag, a platinum Patek inside. Eyed it like a pawnbroker. "Nice watch." "Real?" That made 3 unnecessary remarks. Brielle said nothing. She slid her phone from her coat, opened her secure timestamp app, and tapped once. The green blink meant it was done. The entire stop, GPS, audio, names, was now encrypted and archived. Not for attention, for evidence. She watched him zip the bag. Slow, dragging. His hands left faint prints on the leather. "You're good," he said at last. She didn't respond. She lifted the handle and walked away. No flare, no eye contact. But behind her, the system she'd quietly engaged had already flagged. Secondary inspection. Mishandled documents. Officer commentary logged. Escalation protocol. Engaged. By the time she reached Gate C12, that report had landed in the inbox of Vantage's legal arm, and in the compliance files of Havenier's top stakeholder. They thought they'd disrupted her travel. She'd just finished audit phase 1. Back at the gate, boarding had moved to Group 2. Her name was nowhere. No Ellis. Brielle on the manifest. No first class. No seat 1A. She stepped to the counter. A younger agent, nervous and red-haired, blinked as she looked up. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Brielle handed over her boarding pass and ID. "My seat was first class, 1A. It's no longer visible." The agent typed, paused, bit her lip. "It shows no active seat. You've been moved to standby." Economy section. Brielle didn't blink. "That's inaccurate. My ticket was confirmed days ago. I'll need to speak to a supervisor," the agent murmured. Brielle nodded. No argument. No pushback. She simply stepped back. Because the audit was already running. Her phone vibrated. Alert. Profile anomaly. Flight HN882. Status. Luggage transfer without tag ID. Her pulse slowed. She tapped her secure portal. Pulled her bag's ID. Nothing. No tag. No check-in. No trace. The bag was gone. She turned. Walked. Not fast, not tense, toward the nearest airline desk. Behind it, a man in his 30s leaned back, distracted. "My carry-on was removed during screening," she said. "It was never checked. I need to know where it is." He squinted. "Do you have a claim number?" "Number I never checked it." "Oh, then it's probably routing through secure belt. Should show up at the gate. I'm not boarded. I'm not in queue. And if it's routing, I need its location now." He hesitated. Typed slowly. "Okay. It says cargo preload, code C37. No flight link." She froze. C37 wasn't standard. It was a security label, used to quarantine flagged material. She pulled her phone, took a photo of his screen, time-stamped. Then she turned and walked. Past travelers, past coffee carts, straight toward the north wing, where claims were handled behind glass. An agent motioned her forward. Gate 17? Might be yours. Got a flagged bag in earlier. He led her through a dim corridor of exposed ductwork and conveyor hums. In a cluttered back room, her case sat in a corner. It was soaked, bent at the edge, half unzipped. She knelt, opened it. Her backup tablet, gone. One folder, creased, corner torn. Her watch case, opened. Velvet lining damp. This wasn't travel wear. This was tampering. She stood. How did this get here? Came in as a misread, the agent said. Tag must have slipped. There was no tag, she replied. It was never checked. This is a breach. He backed off. You can file damage over there. Kiosks online. She nodded. Not in agreement, in acknowledgement. She pulled her phone. Opened her breach protocol. Incident ID. 0004. Type. Unauthorized item removal. Location. Terminal C, LaGuardia. Status. Logged. Documented. Escalated. They hadn't just lost her bag. They'd proven their failure. At 7:50 a.m., Brielle exited the corridor in silence. No demands. No raised voice. No need. She didn't need revenge. She had leverage. And that was worth more than any apology. She stood just outside Terminal C's executive office, far enough from wandering eyes, close enough for a clean signal. Brielle Ellis unlocked a high-clearance Nexus channel, scanned her fingerprint, and accessed a folder labeled Vault Sigma/Emergency Protocol. Active. A dashboard blinked to life. Location. LaGuardia Terminal. C subject. Ellis B/access suppression pattern. Window. 0600 to 0800 EST status. 72% compiled. She expanded the file. Time-stamped entries lit up the screen. Denied entry. Facial ID flags. Unlawful screening. Classified item breach. Luggage mishandled. Each line had already been logged by the network she helped architect. Only one step remained. Her thumb hovered, then tapped. Classification. Strategic suppression/Tier 1. Result. Escalate to capital oversight. Instantly, the alert crossed from back-end scan to legal record. Not an email. Not a form. An audit trigger. Code locked, compliance bonded, investor fed. At 7:56 a.m., 3 people received it. Carla Donovan, head of compliance, Orion Private Capital Marcus Thorne, general counsel, Geneva Sovereign Equity Senator Lorraine Keyes, chair, U.S. Senate Ethics Transport Oversight. They didn't need background. Brielle's name was context enough. She returned to the benches near gate C12. Her seat? Gone. Another passenger occupied 1A. No announcement, no note, no apology. Exactly as expected. The staff still moved with smiles and schedules, oblivious to the countdown now ticking behind the screen. By protocol, they had 45 minutes to respond to a Tier 3 Nexus breach. 12 were already gone. She checked her tablet. No acknowledgement yet. Perfect. A few yards away, a gate agent called out final boarding for Flight 882 to Zurich. Brielle didn't move, didn't stand. Instead, she pulled out a manila folder, one prepared long before today. Its label read, Havenair Gate Discrimination Audit. Internal use only. Inside, 32 case files. All sealed, all real. Each one involving a first-class black passenger. All challenged, all downgraded, all quietly erased. She placed the folder on the desk of the Executive Services receptionist. Give this to Leonard Westbrook, she said, voice low. Tell him it's active. The woman blinked, reached for the folder automatically. Brielle didn't wait. She turned and walked back into the terminal light. Behind her, the walls weren't just glass anymore. They were becoming exhibits. 8:02 a.m. She stood still, hands folded, facing the skyline. Final boarding echoed behind her. Still no alert. Still no response. She opened her private channel, not connected to any public network. One entry sat at the top. Core, no label, no explanation. She tapped. It didn't ring. It connected. A voice answered instantly. Yes, she said 2 words. It's time. No summary. No emotion. No plea. Understood, came the reply. Line ended. Signal encrypted. And with that, it began. In Zurich, Nexus Strategic Holdings opened a master file, linked to Havenair's global access structure. The phrase, it's time, wasn't ceremonial. It was the trigger key tied to escalation clauses in $650 million worth of equity and compliance contracts. Within minutes, All negotiations between Havanair and Orion Pacific froze. Capital withdrawals initiated across 3 fiscal zones. Legal notifications dispatched to international transport monitors. Compliance protocols flagged across federal channels. Back in LaGuardia, Brielle sat calmly. At the podium, Trent Maxwell called out groups, flipping through his clipboard like nothing had shifted. He didn't know yet, but in Geneva, a boardroom was already scrambling. In D.C., Nexus Ethics flagged a Level 1 violation attached to a federal mobility contract. In Midtown, analysts watched a $650 million freeze hit their dashboards in real time. Brielle's tablet buzzed. Contract withdrawal confirmed market impact estimate. $650 million over 5 quarters. Internal. Westbrook notified. Response pending. She locked the screen. No smile. No sign of victory. Only control. Trent was still scanning passengers. Still confident. Still issuing instructions with the calm of someone who believed the system ran for him. He had no idea the system had already deleted him from relevance. She leaned back, breath even. This wasn't protest. It was surgical termination. 8:11 a.m. Trent Maxwell leaned over the gate desk, tapping updates with practiced ease. Sharp suit, hair crisp, demeanor collected. A clipboard passed to him. He scanned it, signed casually. Then his radio crackled. Maxwell, Concourse Control. Report to Boardroom B now. He paused, blinked. Boardroom B? We don't use that room anymore. The voice came back colder. You do today. Bring your clearance badge. Do not delay. He lowered the radio. Something about that tone. It wasn't casual. It wasn't optional. Still, he forced a grin at his assistant. Cover for me. I'll be 10. But 10? Would be too late. He walked down the corridor. The lights buzzed overhead. Vending machines hummed. A TV played silent weather. Everything felt normal. Until it didn't. 3 years ago, Boardroom B was used for bomb threats. Today, it was for something far more dangerous. Accountability. Trent reached for the handle. Opened the door. Inside, 3 people already waiting. Inside Boardroom B, 3 people waited. Clara Donahue, Regional Director for the Northeast. Martin Ruggles, Legal Counsel flown in overnight under sealed protocol. And a silent assistant holding a black folder marked Confidential/Ellis Incident 882. The room's air dropped 10 degrees. Trent Maxwell adjusted his jacket. All good? He tried, voice reaching for lightness. Clara didn't answer. She opened the folder, turned it toward him. A still frame, terminal footage. Trent, mid-gesture, blocking Brielle Ellis. Recognize her? He squinted. Passenger from this morning. We downgraded her. Manifest issue. Martin cut in. Voice cool as glass. She's not just a passenger. She holds control shares in 2 of our major financial partners. She has veto authority in Nexus. She's already pulled $870 million in long-term capital. Trent's throat tensed. She didn't present credentials. You flagged her, Clara interrupted. You reclassified her. You revoked access you weren't cleared to touch. I followed internal process, he insisted, but his voice was slipping. No, Martin replied. You followed bias, and the audit trail proves it. Lounge denial, TSA trigger, boarding lockout, meal preference override, time-stamped, patterned. Forensic Trent shrank. Clara slid another document across the table. Not an isolated error. 24 incidents under your badge ID in 3 months. Same behavior, same profile. Misunderstandings, he muttered. I can clarify. Martin handed over a sealed envelope. No, Trent. You can resign. Our face public ethics review. Silence. Outside, the world spun. Coffee orders, rolling luggage, overhead calls. Inside, the first fracture had formed. Trent didn't pick up the envelope. He didn't need to. 8:17 a.m. He sat still, color drained. And across the city, the echo had already started. At Orion Holdings in Midtown, a Bloomberg alert blinked red. Havanair stock, down 7%, then 15%. Within 90 seconds, sell orders flooded in. The sovereign fund had withdrawn. The capital freeze had gone global. And still, at Gate C12, no announcement played. Brielle Ellis sat motionless, tablet quiet on her lap, eyes calmly watching the staff scramble. The algorithm tried to compensate. Too late. 8:21 a.m. Encrypted messages hit every Nexus-aligned inbox. Priority stakeholder has activated breach clause sector. Transport action. Recommend non-renewal. In D.C., the Department of Transportation received its second ping. Contract terminated cause, discriminatory breach of federal vendor ethics. There were no cameras, no speeches, no posts trending. But the silence, it had become a weapon. Across the concourse, Trent emerged. No blazer, no headset, no clipboard. He didn't go back to the gate. He disappeared into the service corridor and never returned. The agent now at his desk tapped nervously at her screen. A supervisor leaned in, whispering into a headset. Something was wrong. They could feel it, but they didn't know how deep it went. Brielle's phone buzzed once. DOJ. Monitoring. Live.breach. Filed exposure loss estimate. $870 million over 36 hours. Internal leak probability. High. She read it once, then locked her screen. She didn't need another update. She could feel the shift in the air. Beneath her seat. Inside their infrastructure. The same hands that once denied her boarding privileges were now struggling to keep their corporations afloat. Because this wasn't about dignity. It was about durability. And Brielle had removed theirs. She stood slowly. Her coat stirred with the subtle gust of overhead ventilation. The terminal, once alive with noise and motion, felt muted. Tense. She walked toward the central screen. One by one, red banners replaced green. Gate change, operational delay, flight under review. Then, Zurich 882. Status, standby, adjustment in progress. No formal statement, none needed. Flight 882, the one she was never meant to be on, had become collateral. 8:32 a.m. Overhead lights flickered, just once, barely noticeable, but Brielle noticed. The listing for Zurich blinked amber. Under internal review. A man in a suit checked his watch. Another lowered his carry-on slowly. No one spoke. Then a door marked authorized personnel. Only opened. Leonard Westbrook stepped through. Pressed gray suit, no tie. Phone in hand, sweat at his brow. His eyes scanned fast, then locked on hers. When they met, he froze. Brielle didn't wave, didn't rise. She simply looked. And in that stare, he understood. It wasn't fury. It was finality. He crossed the floor with stiff urgency. "Miss Ellis," he said. "I've been briefed." No hello. Just fear disguised as diplomacy. She gave a single nod. He fidgeted with his cuffs. "There have been, some issues." She lifted a brow. "Issues?" He corrected quickly. "Systemic failures. I've seen the documentation. It doesn't reflect our values." "It is your values," she said quietly. He winced. "We've suspended multiple team members. Initiated a full review." "You're not initiating anything," she said, voice flat. "You're reacting. Very late." He swallowed. "We want to make this right." She didn't scoff, didn't blink. Instead, she reached into her case. Pulled the sealed manila folder. The same one from earlier. "Here's your chance," she said. 32 passengers. First class. Same flags, same treatment, same quiet exits. He took it, but didn't open it. Didn't need to. It wasn't information. It was reflection. All of this, she continued, wasn't enforced through brutality. It was enforced through erasure. Quiet, procedural erasure. She stepped forward once. Just enough. Your system didn't just inconvenience people. It made them vanish. He cleared his throat. "What do you want?" She didn't raise her voice. "I wanted data. I got it. Now I want to know how much you're willing to lose." Her phone buzzed again. Zurich. Regulatory notice approved press channel. Queued national distribution. Standing by. She didn't hit send. Not yet. Instead, she met his eyes again. "You have until the next outbound flight," she said. "After that, this goes public. The contracts dissolve, and Avenir becomes a case study in collapse." He opened his mouth. No words came. He turned, quickly, heading for the conference suite. Inside, chaos. Paperwork everywhere. People shouting. Monitors blinking red. Collapse had arrived. Brielle stood in the center of the terminal. Not triumphant. Not furious. Just undeniable. Because this was never about vengeance. It was about proof. And now, the denied seat, the flagged luggage, the scanning glances, they weren't whispers anymore. They were evidence. And she had all of it. 8:45 a.m. The terminal hadn't emptied, but something had shifted. It wasn't the people. It wasn't the flights. It was the energy. Like the current had reversed direction. The usual rhythm, boarding calls, rolling luggage, espresso steam, still hummed, but the source of momentum had changed. It no longer came from announcements. It came from her. Brielle Ellis stood quietly beside gate C12, coat folded neatly, phone still in hand. She hadn't hit send. She didn't need to. Across the glass, the executive suite resembled a sealed diorama of unraveling. Leaders paced. Fingers pointed at screens and reports that had lost their relevance. At the window, Leonard Westbrook stood still. The folder remained sealed in his grip, but it didn't matter anymore. What it held had already moved. Across time zones, across networks, across corporate command. Her audit logs were live. The timer had expired. And the market? It had already answered. By 9 a.m., Orion Global would be forced to halt all international operations tied to Haven Air. Not as a gesture, as a surrender. Brielle turned from the gate. She had no intention of flying to Zurich. She had arrived exactly where she needed to be. Because power isn't about destination. It's about the shift that happens when you refuse to be moved. She walked toward the central terminal display. New alerts rolled across the board. Flight adjusted gate, rerouted status, under corporate audit. All dressed up like routine. All telling the same story. A few feet away, her phone buzzed again. Not a report. A voice. She pressed play. For too long, we measured success by size, not ethics. We excused patterns because we called them legacy. We were wrong. Today isn't protest. It's reckoning. The voice belonged to Orion's CEO. Polished. Scripted. But this time, shaken. Too late. She ended the message and slipped the phone into her pocket. A young black woman in uniform approached, hesitating near the check-in lane. Ms. Ellis. Brielle turned. I work baggage sorting, the woman said, voice quiet, eyes wide. I saw what they did. Most of us, we don't speak. But thank you for holding your place. Brielle didn't smile. She nodded once. You're still here, she said. The woman nodded back. I'm not going anywhere. No more needed to be said. They parted. Brielle walked past the Zurich gate, past the lounge that had once closed its doors to her, past the duty-free store now rearranging signage after frozen contracts blocked their airline promotions. She reached gate D1. No noise, no rush. Another airline. Another city. This time, her boarding pass scanned clean. No resistance. No double check. Just a green light. She stepped onto the jet bridge. Behind her, the intercom crackled. Attention all Orion International passengers. Effective immediately. Global operations are under review. Please proceed to service counters for rerouting. But Brielle was already moving forward. Not as a customer. As a signal. She wasn't boarding to prove her worth. She was boarding because she had already rewritten the ceiling. She didn't glance back as the terminal vanished behind her. No cheers, no spotlight. Just the quiet consequence of change echoing through a structure she had just broken open. She didn't carry baggage. She carried truth. And what she left behind wasn't delay. It was instruction. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just walks forward, and the system follows.